So this week, Peugeot announced their new 9X8 Le Mans hypercar that will contest next year's WEC season, and it's quite the interesting concept. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. So we've also got some other World Endurance Championship news to talk about from this week, though this isn't as good of news because the 6 hours of Fuji has been canceled. Now, right after it was canceled, they announced that it would be replaced by the 6 hours of Bahrain. So they already had a 8-hour race scheduled for Bahrain, so that will be a double header. So yeah, obviously they've already lost a couple of tracks. I think they had Silverstone and Coda, and I guess they had to add Monza because of races they cut because of COVID. So the World Endurance Championship has had quite a bit of issues with their relatively small schedule of 6 races. So obviously that sucks for, I guess, people who like watching racing in Fuji, or just people in Japan or whatever. Obviously don't get their World Endurance Championship race this year. That sucks, but on another note, IndyCar. We've got some news about the Nashville Music City Grand Prix, and this time it's actually good news because there's going to be possibly as much as 28 entries into the Music City Grand Prix, and it's pretty well locked in at least 27, and there's a possible 28th entry that we don't really have much information about, but the 27 entries are, of course, the normal 24. Elio Castroneves, the number 45 car from Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing with Santino Ferrucci, and other confirmed entry, the 27th entry, is the 52 car from Rick Ware Racing. That'll be driven by Cody Ware. So that is actually the most entries, whether 27 or 28, the most entries of a non-Indy 500 race since 2013. So got quite the entry list. Since apparently before 2013, which is, I guess I started watching IndyCar in 2014 when I was old enough to pay attention for 2 hours. I started watching in 2014, and at that point there were only like 24 cars or so per race, and then it started going down. But apparently before that there was like 27 or 28 cars entering into races pretty regularly. This year's entry list has been kind of weird because there's the 24 like confirmed, like they race at every race entries. That the 52 car probably could have been a 5th. They just really couldn't get sponsorship together until, I guess, Road America, when they had the first race that they went to. And it looks like that'll probably be a pretty consistent entry, and we could probably knock that in as a 25th entry for every race. But yeah, so most cars entered in a race since 2013, other than, of course, the Indy 500. So, some more things to talk about with scheduling. We've got the Australian Grand Prix, which we've thought for a while might get canceled. It has officially been canceled. And F1 has already stated that they're wanting to still try to get 23 races in. Now, originally, a 23 race schedule was going to be quite ambitious. And then you add in the COVID factor, and it's basically impossible. The fact that we've only had, like, real issues with one race, I guess you could say, even Australia. I mean, obviously races have been canceled and postponed and stuff, but like generally they can get rescheduled quite quickly. At this point, we've kind of ran out of places to go because at most places, either they can have a race and they already have a race on the calendar, like, I don't know, in Istanbul or anything that's on the schedule, or places that you just flat out can't go, either due to like European travel restrictions or like just non-grade 1 tracks and stuff like that. But it's going to be interesting trying to figure out a replacement for the Australian Grand Prix, because obviously there's already been races canceled, namely, we've already had the Chinese Grand Prix get canceled, which was replaced by Portimao. the Canadian Grand Prix, which was originally replaced by Istanbul, but then replaced by a second Austrian Grand Prix, or Styrian Grand Prix, I guess. And then, of course, the Singapore Grand Prix cancellation that led to the putting Istanbul back on the calendar later in the year so that it wouldn't be subject to travel restrictions anymore. There's already been discussion. There was discussion with Singapore opening of putting a possible second U.S. Grand Prix in, though that whole met up much better with the U.S. Grand Prix than a second U.S. Grand Prix in replacing Australia would be, because looking at the schedule, replacing Australia with COTA would likely mean either a month gap between the U.S. Grand Prix and a second U.S. Grand Prix, or moving the U.S. Grand Prix back, or the replacement Australia race forward, which moving that race forward would likely be a giant logistical challenge, and I don't think that they're going to move the race back either, so it would probably mean that a second U.S. Grand Prix is, in my opinion, sadly, off the table. Though that does leave some other options, mainly the two races around the Australian Grand Prix, the Brazilian Grand Prix and Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Now, if you're going to use one of those tracks, I think every single F1 fan can agree that the Brazilian Grand Prix would be a much better race to replace the Australian Grand Prix, obviously just because Interlagos is about 100 trillion times better of a racetrack than Saudi Arabia, because it has one passing zone that's unbelievably tight and hard to get around, versus Interlagos, which has passing zones in quite a lot of places and is quite notably chaotic in terms of just past events. So obviously, everyone would like a second Brazilian Grand Prix, but we still don't know what actually will replace that. Obviously, the FIA hasn't said anything. Obviously, I'll assume we'll get something soon, because obviously this type of stuff, you want to know that stuff as soon as possible, because putting on a Formula One Grand Prix is not as easy as just showing up with the cars and running a race. Obviously, there's months of preparation that gets put into that, and if all of a sudden one city were to get the U.S. Grand Prix, what used to be the Australian Grand Prix, just kind of thrown into their hands randomly, that'd be a little bit of a logistical challenge. So I assume this would be something that comes out quickly. I'll keep you guys updated if anything else comes out about that. Another thing in terms of scheduling stuff that we're going to talk about, IndyCar is looking to add more oval tracks in 2022. This year, they only had 4 oval races, or will have had 4 oval races at 3 different tracks, Indy, Gateway, and Texas, with a doubleheader at Texas. Which, when you're talking about a series that's known for its oval race, the Indy 500, it's not really a lot of oval races. It's really become quite a road course series, and more of just people look at it as a slower copycat mix of F1 and NASCAR. So they're looking at adding more ovals, which is obviously great. I love ovals, especially way more than road courses, because generally the oval races are more fun. Obviously the main candidate that you would think to be added back onto the schedule would be Iowa. There are a couple of other tracks that could get added on back. Obviously, you've got Pocono. Milwaukee was on the schedule for a while. Phoenix was on the schedule as recently as 2018, though it doesn't look likely that they would have any race in the future. And obviously, there's the 1.5-mile tracks. Obviously, the main candidate, like I said, to get added back onto the schedule is Iowa. And that might be as far as they go for now. They might end up putting some type of other short oval back onto the track. I don't think we're going to get another super speedway until at least 2023. So, yeah, that'll be interesting to see what they actually end up doing with that, because the schedule needs more ovals. The fact that we only had 4 oval races this year is just terrible. Like, you need more oval races in a year for an IndyCar season. So let's go ahead and move on to the last thing we're going to talk about today, Peugeot's 9X8 Hypercar. So obviously, the first thing that sticks out on this car is the noticeable lack of rear wing on the car. Now, Peugeot have been quite tight-lipped about why they chose to not put a rear wing on. They said that they had found enough grip to not need the rear wing, which probably means that they've gotten quite a good bond of mechanical grip and some level of aerodynamic grip on the car. Probably means some type of stuff on the floor or something that we obviously can't see from the renderings that they've got. And maybe some type of overbody thing that doesn't look, or that doesn't stand out when you first look at it. Another thing that looks interesting to me is the front of the car, like the grille. I guess not really the grille, but like, I guess just the front of the car is like wide open, like all the way up to like where you get to the top of the, like, I guess where a hood would be on a normal car. I don't exactly know how, like, what all the terms are for LMP1 cars or whatever. I don't know the terms for that stuff, but on the front of the car, the like opening at the front is quite large. There's also air scoops on like the middle to the rear of the car. Probably for engine cooling or something. Maybe it's an aerodynamic thing that we don't know about. Don't know. But this is quite the interesting hypercar because, I mean, mainly the rear wing. Clearly they have noticed something or figured something out that we don't know. It'll be interesting to see if other teams would be looking to take off the rear wing and try to add more grip elsewhere. Yeah. So they will be joining the LMP or the LMDH class, no, LMH class in 2022, along with Baikalus, who will be joining in 2022, Toyota Gazoo Racing, and Glickenhaus, and maybe Alpine if they decide to come back next year. They'd have to develop their own car because this year they're just racing a old LMP1 from Rebellion Racing. So it'll be interesting to see how that turns out. Is the car actually good without the rear wing? Is it really actually a good enough car to not need a rear wing? Or are they, I guess, taking off the rear wing they might need? That's really, I guess, all I've got for this video. Thank you guys all so much for watching. I might have a race review out of the NASCAR race I might have a race review out of the NASCAR race this weekend, wherever it is, but I probably won't. I'm also thinking about having some different videos coming out next week, though I don't know what exactly they'll be or if I'll post anything at all. I'm just trying to kind of fill the content gap so it's not just posting once every Friday for a month until Nashville. But I'll see if I can come up with something to put out. That's really all I have. Thank you guys all so much for watching. I will see you all later. Bye.